China presses Dutch minister for access to chip-making tech. Anti-Putin group claims, liberated town inside Russia's Belgorod. Millions in Mexico near Volcano warned to prepare for evacuation. China boycotts G20 meeting held by India in Kashmir region. Heads of state speak twice on Israel-Saudi normalization. Turkey's third-place candidate endorses Erdogan in runoff. Brazil declares animal health emergency for avian flu. China's new ambassador to the U.S. arrives Tuesday.
Hello, I'm Wade Lee. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Wednesday, May 24th, and here are your top stories. China's foreign minister pressed his Dutch counterpart on Tuesday for access to advanced chip-making technology that has been blocked on security grounds. Qin Gang said, as for the issue of lithography machines, China has serious concerns about this. The Chinese ambassador to the Netherlands earlier threatened possible unspecified retaliation, but the ministers gave no indication they discussed that in their 2.5-hour meeting. The Chinese minister tried to downplay security fears about Beijing.
Associated Press reported there was no indication the Netherlands changed its restriction on the supply of lithography machines available only from a single Dutch company that uses ultraviolet light to etch tiny circuits on next-generation processor chips. The lack of that tool is holding back Chinese efforts to develop chips for smartphones, artificial intelligence, and other advanced applications. Dutch Foreign Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Wopke Hoekstra said, "We have shared our national security concerns."
A Russian revolutionary group opposed to Russian President Vladimir Putin claimed to have liberated a town in Russia near the border with Ukraine. The rebel faction, the Freedom of Russia Legion, said it had liberated the town of Kozinka in the Belgorod region, and its forces were now entering the town of Graveron along with another resistant group called the Russian Volunteer Corps. The governor of Russia's Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Glagrov, said a Ukrainian sabotage group has entered the town of Graveron.
The Freedom of Russia Legion also posted a statement Monday saying they were Russians who no longer wanted to justify the actions of criminals in power and are now taking up arms to defend our and your freedom. The group also warned Belgorod residents to stay at home as they move through the region. The Freedom of Russia Legion was formed last year, consisting of defecting Russians who took up arms against their home country to help defend Ukraine.
Millions of people in Mexico have been warned to prepare for a possible evacuation after increased activity from the country's most dangerous active volcano, which has been spewing ash into several nearby towns since last week. Ash from Popocatépetl volcano has delayed flights in Mexico City and led authorities to close schools in dozens of municipalities. Some 25 million people live in a 60-mile radius of the volcano, which is located between the state of Morelos, Puebla, and the state of Mexico.
On Sunday, Mexican National Civil Protection Coordination, CNPC, increased its volcanic threat level to Yellow Phase 3, which calls on some 3 million people who live in towns and villages adjacent to the volcano to prepare for a possible evacuation. The CNPC warned of greater volcanic activity and the dispersion of ash into several nearby towns at high speed. Mexico City's Benito Juarez International Airport was temporarily closed on Saturday and some flights were delayed on Monday.
China said last Friday it would not attend the Group of 20 meeting in the Himalaya territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Srinagar, the summer capital of Jammu and Kashmir, is scheduled to host a tourism meeting for G20 members this week. The Indian government has marketed it as an opportunity to showcase the region's culture, despite criticism from rights groups and expected boycotts from a handful of countries. CNN said Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey were expected to boycott the event.
Kashmir is one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints, claimed in its entirety by both India and Pakistan. In April, Pakistan, which is not a G20 member, criticized India's decision to hold the tourism meeting in Kashmir, calling it an irresponsible move. India, the world's largest democracy with a population of more than 1.4 billion, has been keen to position itself as a leader of emerging and developing nations since it assumed the G20 presidency.
time on my own, I never thought I'd be here.
I take your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。Funday 英语。
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman spoke on the phone twice in recent weeks. A foreign diplomatic source said Monday Netanyahu and MBS spoke before and after last week's Arab League meeting to discuss the possibility of normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Last week, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen told the Jerusalem Post normalization with Saudi Arabia was not a matter of if, but of when. We and Saudi Arabia have the same interests.
According to the N12 news site, reports the Saudis' leader presented a list of demands for Israeli concessions vis-a-vis the Palestinians. Those demands include allowing the Palestinian security apparatus to be strengthened at the expense of the IDF in Judea and Samaria. Cohen told N12 Saturday night that normalization with Saudi Arabia could come within the next 6 months to a year, though senior Saudi officials have said publicly that headway must be made between Israel and the Palestinians for Riyadh to take that step.
Turkey's third-place election candidate endorsed President Tayyip Erdogan on Monday, boosting the incumbent and intensifying the challenges for opposition candidate Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu in a Sunday runoff vote. Sinak Ogan, a hardline nationalist, told a press conference in Accra, "I declare that we will support the People's Alliance candidate Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the second round." He said Kılıçdaroğlu's National Alliance failed to convince us about the future.
Sinan Ogan, who was little known among the broader public before the campaign, 5-1 and 20% support in the initial presidential election on May 14, prompting some analysts to call him a potential kingmaker for the runoff. The 55-year-old former academic was the candidate of an alliance of right-wing parties led by the Victory Party. In an interview with Reuters last week, Ogan said his goal was to remove two mainly Kurdish parties from Turkey's political equation and bolster Turkish nationalists and secularists.
On Monday, Brazil declared a state of animal health emergency for 180 days in response to the country's first ever detection of the highly pathogenic avian influenza virus in wild birds. Reuters said based on guidelines of the World Organization for Animal Health, infections by the H5N1 subtype of avian flu in wild birds does not trigger trade bans. However, a case of bird flu on a farm usually results in the entire flock being killed and can trigger trade restrictions from importing countries.
Brazil, the world's biggest chicken meat exporter with $9.7 billion in sales last year, has so far confirmed 8 cases of H5N1 in wild birds, including 7 in Espírito Santo state and 1 in Rio de Janeiro state. The country's agriculture ministry said on Monday that it has created an emergency operations center to coordinate, plan and evaluate national actions related to avian influenza. Brazil Health Ministry said samples of 33 suspected cases of avian influenza in humans came back negative for the H5N1 subtype.
The news outlet Politico reported that on Monday, China's new ambassador to the U.S., Xie Feng, will arrive in Washington as early as Tuesday to take up his post. Xie previously served as vice foreign minister and is the successor to Qin Gang, who left Washington in January to become China's foreign minister. The media said Xie is a career diplomat and specialist in U.S.-China relations. Xie's arrival suggests that Beijing might want to reduce the U.S.-China bilateral acrimony recently.
A diplomat with expertise in Chinese foreign policy said Xie was selected as ambassador over assistant for Foreign Minister Hua Chunying, China's foreign ministry spokesperson notorious for sharp-tongued pushback against foreign critics. Xie also has his own record of wolf warrior-style diplomacy. In July 2021, Xie led a meeting with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman during which he scolded her for what he said was the administration's highly misguided mindset and dangerous policy toward China.
Now let's take a look at the vocabulary from the news of China pressing Dutch for chip-making tech. Number 1, press, 催促, 逼迫. The bank is pressing us for repayment of the loan. Number 2, ground, 充分的理由, 根据. He retired from the job on health grounds. Number 3, retaliate, 报复. The shooting may have been in retaliation for the arrest of the terrorist suspects. Number 4, downplay, 对某事轻描淡写，贬低. The coach is downplaying the team's poor performance. And that's all for today's Funday News. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below now to join Funday for free. I'm Wei Li, your host. I'll see you next time.